Good evening. So this is the second and the final night of our Lenten retreat. And tonight we have our Lenten speaker by the name of Father E.J. DeSilva. Basically, he's very simple priest. That's the reason why I have only a very simple introduction. Okay? He's the present pastor of St. Peter the Apostle in River Aids. He was ordained in 2019, so he's very young. I was ordained 1995. Oh, you're reacting to that? Wait until you hear that Father George was ordained in the 1930s. Okay? So basically, Father AJ also is the chaplain of U.S. Army Reserve. So this is a little bit interesting. So probably he will elaborate a little bit about himself when he do the talk. Just a reminder that the second part of tonight's Lenten retreat will be the sacrament of confession. So we have 4 priests available tonight. Father EJ himself, and he will be occupying the box there on that side. Okay. Father Bob, OFM, he's with us right now. He will be on that side of that exit. I will be occupying this exit, and Father George will be occupying next to me on that side. So we have 4 priests, and then during the confession, Nancy Joy, our faith formation director, will be directing all the traffics. So make sure that there will be no empty confessors during the confession, so that we can just go through with it smoothly. Okay? So I will give you now Father EJ. Let us welcome Father EJ in our church. Thank you.
All right, can you hear me there in the back, everyone? Okay, I thought I'd try the wireless. Well, I guess it's a delight to be the youngest priest here in the place here this evening. I know there's some younger folks than me. I did think that Father Bob, when he walked in, said he was ordained in the 20s. So good for Father Bob. Since we just finished St. Patrick's Day, I'll tell you a little joke, and then I'll introduce Anna for a second. But there was Patty, and Patty was late for a meeting. And he was desperate to get to the meeting on time, and there were no parking spots. So Patty lets out this prayer and a promise to God. Lord, if you find me a parking spot, I'll go to Mass every Sunday. I'll even give up the whiskey. And miraculously, wouldn't you know, a parking spot opens up right in front of him. He looks up and he says, "Never mind, I found one." I say that joke because that's you and I often, right? The Lord often answers prayers or asks something of us. God can challenge us in ways, and quickly I'm doing it my way. And so I thought, because of that, Anna was going to lead us in an opening song meditation, talking about our reliance and our need for the Lord.
Lord, I come, I confess, bowing here, I find my rest, and without you, I fall apart. You're the one that guides my heart. Yeah, Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteous righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. How I need you. Where sin runs deep, your grace is more. Where grace is found is where you are. And where you are, Lord, I am free. Holiness is Christ in me. Lord, I need you. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. So teach my song to rise to you. When temptation comes my way, and when I cannot stand, I'll fall on you. Jesus, you're my hope and stay. Oh, when I cannot stand, I'll fall on you. Jesus, you're my hope and stay. We sing, Lord, I need you. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. You are my one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you.
I am the second oldest of 10 children, and when I was four, my father got diagnosed with a brain tumor. And so from about age 4 to about 6, or maybe 4.5 to 6.5, my father kind of declined throughout some surgeries and eventually passed away when I was almost turning 7. And I think my understanding of suffering has been shaped by watching my father, even at a young age, watching my father suffer through those years. And something that I'll always remember is when he would have to get a shot or something that was painful, he would tell the children, well, this shot I'm offering up for AJ. This shot I'm offering up for Katie or for Rosie or for John. And so that idea of my father taking this suffering and offering it or redeeming it somehow by offering it up for one of us kind of shaped my own understanding of suffering in the world. And it was an important lesson. It's an important lesson for me, but I think for all of us who have experienced suffering or maybe been close to someone who suffered themselves. We can't escape suffering, right? During that beautiful song, I was looking up at the crucifix that we have in every church. There's a reason we have a crucifix in every church, Jesus suffering, right? Because Jesus' suffering has meaning. It has meaning because it redeems you and I. And so when I think back to my father, right, who I hope and pray is in heaven now, I see that he in some ways is mirrored that redemptive quality of suffering, that suffering that's not meaningless, even though it's difficult. And so with that kind of introduction, I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of my own experiences, kind of maybe being inspired through suffering, and maybe we can apply some of those to whatever you're going through. Like I said before, each one of us has suffering and can't escape it. Some of our sufferings are more minor, some of us are more major, but we are given an opportunity maybe tonight to rethink our suffering, maybe to allow Christ's suffering and death and resurrection to shape, form, and ultimately make our suffering redemptive. So I've been only a priest not even 6 years, but I was a religious brother before that. I was in France for many years as a monk, and I'm also a chaplain in the Army Reserves. So I've been in the Army Reserves now for about almost 12 years, sometimes active, currently reserves. And there are particular sufferings that soldiers go through, or that are pretty much indicative or representative of a soldier's life or a warrior. And I think the very first suffering is obvious, right? When a soldier puts his life on the line, when a soldier answers the call, in some ways a soldier is saying, I'm willing to suffer for a greater good. It's simple, right? But it's powerful. A soldier, maybe some of you are veterans yourselves here tonight, or you have people in your family that have served. A soldier who risks his life, puts himself into the possibility of suffering for a greater good. I think that's why Jesus says, greater love than this hath no man than to lay down his life for another. And so already there, Jesus is letting us into a secret of suffering, that the suffering can be lived for a greater good. And so each one of us, can ask ourselves that question, what is it what is the greater good that God is inviting me into, challenging me into? It's interesting, I work now, is this being recorded? It is. Oh, it's live. Okay. All right. Thank you. So I work now with, so I'm in the reserves, but I work with some of our more elite soldiers on the active side. And so for a number of weeks out of the year, I spend time with soldiers who are on the active side who don't have enough Catholic priests with them. And these soldiers, I won't get into any details, but these soldiers are like the most elite in our army. I'll let you figure that out. But they're really the most elite, and when you look in in the chapels of our most elite warriors, there's an interesting phrase that you'll recognize from the Bible. It's from Isaiah chapter 6. You understand what it says, "Whom shall I send? Here I am, Lord, send me." And that's kind of one of the slogans for the U.S. Army Special Forces. Here am I, send me. So our soldiers have this mantra, or this idea, this way of life, which recognizes there's a call, despite suffering, for a greater good. And they respond to that call. How beautiful that is. So that's kind of one of the difficulties or sufferings that a soldier can go through. There's also kind of like the obvious suffering of losing a life or limb. And what I've noticed working with soldiers, especially in combat, is you have a place for God that maybe wasn't there without the difficulty. You've all heard the phrase, right? There's no atheist in a foxhole, right? Well, it's just as true in the desert of Iraq or Syria or in a bunker, right? When rockets are coming down or when drones are exploding, that's an opportunity to reach out and hang on to the Lord. I remember one time I was in Syria, and I took a helicopter there with my assistant because there were some soldiers who had just lost another soldier. So I was going to do a little memorial service. And I show up, jump off the helicopter, and the captain of this little outpost greets me at the helicopter. It's like this little dusty field. And he says, "Chaplain, I'm so glad you're here." I said, "Oh, that's nice. He must be Catholic." And then he says, Chaplain, I'm so glad you're here. We're about ready to get hit. Oh, no. So this is a great way to start my little time in Syria. So we're like, we have X amount of time before we think we're going to get hit. So we're trying to do this memorial service before we get hit. And so we had a mass. We prayed for the soldier that had just passed. And as I was finishing up, I knew there was very little time before, potential rocket attack. And so I'm cleaning up the mass. I've said mass on a little cardboard box in a little room in a bunker. And right as I finish, a little soldier comes running in, about 19 years old. And he says, I heard there was Catholic Mass. Did I miss it? I just packed everything up and everything. So I didn't really know what to say, so I kind of said, well, you missed the first one, but I'm about ready to start the second one. So we started the second Mass, and wouldn't you know, right around the Our Father, the rockets start coming. And so we took shelter, we huddled, we did everything, and then about 9 hours later, I finished Mass. I think it's probably the longest Mass that's ever been there. Imagine having a 9-hour Mass. So this little soldier, though, he in the midst of a rocket attack, he crawled over to me, and he kind of put his head down next to me, and he wanted to pray. And he kind of put his head down on the ground, and he wanted to pray. So I prayed with him. And I think there was such fear in this little 19-year-old's person that he wanted to be close to the last person that had brought God to him. And it's really, really beautiful, right? This idea of moving towards God in a time of difficulty, in a time of suffering. How beautiful. That always made an impression. This little guy crawling over the gravel, trying to get close to the person who he knew had the Eucharist, on him. Another time, speaking more about kind of the invisible suffering that maybe a soldier would go through. In another attack, a soldier got caught in between the rockets and then where everyone else was. And so he was stuck out for many hours with rockets landing all around him. And he was shell-shocked. And so he didn't have the use of his tongue. He couldn't speak. And so they brought me over to, there was no psychologist. There's about 100 soldiers out in the middle of nowhere. There was obviously no psychologist. There was no doctor. But there was a chaplain. So they brought him I went over to him, and we sat down and talked, and I'm trying every little thing to try and get through to this guy. Again, 20 years old, 21 years old. Trying to talk about sports, where's he from, what's going on, all this stuff. About 10, 15 minutes trying to get through to him. Can't get through to him. Finally, it dawns on me, well, I'm a Catholic priest. Maybe I should pray with this guy. Right? You think that'd be the first thing I do, but no. Well, I start praying, and wouldn't you know, he's able to, for those few minutes of prayer, he stops. He stops shaking. He stops. He comes back to reality to pray the prayers that he learned as a child. Maybe some of you have known that with a loved one. Maybe someone who's going through Alzheimer's, or someone who's going through a sickness. That the prayers you learn as a child stay with you. Right? Stay with you. How many times have I visited somebody who couldn't speak, and I pray the Our Father, and the person prays along with me, right? The prayer, the union with God changes my psychology, changes even who I am at the deepest level, right? And so this shell-shocked soldier, try and say that fast, we had to send, obviously, back to probably Kuwait or back to the U.S. eventually, maybe Landstuhl. But for those few moments, right, peace entered his soul. Peace entered into, in a place of war, in a place of hell, peace entered into his soul. So we have, we can recognize ourselves in physical suffering. We can recognize ourselves in invisible suffering. Think about guilt. Guilt. So many soldiers that I deal with have PTSD, or veterans have guilt over things they've done, right? We all maybe have done things that we're not proud of, perhaps things that we feel guilt for. There's something about sin, right? Sin is, it's something that separates me from God. I wanted to read a little passage from the Bible which talks about this. It's very beautiful. It's also the patron of my parish, so St. Peter. So I always like talking about St. Peter. He's a good guy. So the Gospel of John. Remember, Peter had betrayed Jesus, right? Peter was one of the closest apostles, closest friends of Jesus, And right when Jesus needed him, he betrayed him. I don't know the man, 3 times. And so Peter is out, and he's out on a boat, and Jesus has died and resurrected. And they're out about 100 yards off of the land, and they see someone on the shore. And Simon Peter hears that it was the Lord. He puts on his clothes, for he was stripped for work, and jumps into the ocean. About 100 yards. So he jumps into the ocean. He cannot wait for the boat to get there. It's not enough to wait there. He recognizes, I screwed up, I feel guilt, and what am I going to do? I'm going to go right for God. I'm going to go right for Jesus. I'm going to jump out of the boat, and I'm heading right for Jesus. So he's the first one to get to Jesus. That's beautiful, right? If our inclination when we feel guilt over something we've done is to jump out of the boat and spring into action for God, that changes everything. How many years sometimes do I wait before coming to God with something that's burdening me, weighing me down? I think Jesus invites us perhaps tonight, even in the sacrament of confession, to come towards him, to come bring the things that are weighing me down, that are keeping me guilty, that are keeping me separate from him. I think that's such an important lesson, moving towards the Lord. And with that, I wanted to maybe introduce Anna for a second hymn of our evening, second of 3 hymns for our evening.
You are the source of life, and I can't be left behind. No one else will do. I will take hold of you. I need you, Jesus, to come to my rescue. Where else can I go? There's no other name by which I am saved. Capture me with grace. I will follow you. I will follow you. Oh, you are the source of life, and I can't be left behind. No one else will do. I will take hold of you, 'cause I need you, 'cause I need you, Jesus, to come to my rescue. There's no other name by which I am saved. Capture me with grace. I will follow you. I will follow you. Yes, I will. This world has nothing for me. I will follow you. This world has nothing for me. I will follow you. This world has nothing for me. I'm gonna follow you. This world has nothing for me, 'cause I need you, Jesus, to come to my rescue. Where else can I go? There's no other name by which I am saved. Capture me with grace. I will follow you. I will follow you. Let's sing that together. I will follow you. One more time. I will follow you.
Maybe the last little memory or reflection I'll just kind of share with you is we've talked about suffering of body or life. We've talked about interior suffering, whether that's suffering of something that I did or psychological suffering. But there's also, especially with soldiers, there's the suffering of the family, right? When a soldier spends time deployed or spends time away, the family suffers, right? There's the suffering of absence, but particularly there's the suffering when a family loses a soldier or a service member. Something that I do for the state of New Jersey is when there is a soldier who loses their life and their next of kin is in New Jersey, I'm part of the team that goes to notify the family. So usually you get a phone call in the middle of the night and you hear about the deceased, and then you get your best uniform on and you go with another soldier, so there's two of you, and you go to the house. And usually try and go early in the morning so people are there. It's one of the hardest things that I do in my life because you know the moment that people see you, their life has changed forever. But it's also something that there's no good way to let someone know that, but at least you can do it with honor. At least you can honor the service member, the soldier who gave their life or who lost in some way. I remember not too long ago, maybe a couple years ago, notifying a family who I knew, and how difficult that was for them, especially since I knew the young man as well as the family who lived close to me. And in those moments, when you lose someone close to you, it really tries your faith. It really tests your faith. Some of you have lost people. Some of you have lost family members. How difficult that is, the absence that we feel when we lose someone. This particular young man's mother had a particular faith in the Blessed Virgin Mary, particularly in Lourdes, Our Lady of Lourdes. And I remember at the funeral, I think Anna, you might have been there too, I can't remember, but in Newark, yeah. And she gave a eulogy at the funeral, and she talked about how she had this faith and unity with Our Lady of Lourdes, who lost, her son, and how she found her faith so tested, but yet so united to the Blessed Virgin Mary. The suffering that we go through when we lose someone is not something that we can ever get over necessarily. I think back to my own mother, losing her husband, just after a few years after marriage, really. I remember my mother saying that, so my grandmother saying, no mother should lose a son. No mother should lose a son. And I say that because all of these sufferings, we can talk about suffering kind of, theologically. We can talk about suffering from an intellectual level, but it's really here, right? So much of our suffering is right in here. And I just wanted to finish by allowing the Lord to maybe help us in our own suffering. Allow the Lord to help us understand, not just at an intellectual level, but right here, how it is that He wants to help us carry the burden that we might be carrying right now. The letter of St. Paul to the Colossians, what does Paul say? He says, I rejoice in my suffering for your sake. He's talking to the people of the small little church in this little town. He says, in my flesh I complete what is lacking in Christ's afflictions. What does that mean? That means that on the cross, Jesus gave space for your suffering and for my suffering. That He allows, in His act of redemptive suffering, He allows space for you and I to join our suffering to His. And His suffering redeems the world. His suffering gives life to you and to me. His suffering allows it such that my biological life starts, but my spiritual life never ends. His suffering allows me to join my suffering so that my suffering too is redemptive. My suffering too can have some meaning when I join it to the suffering of Jesus Christ. So I just go back to my own father, right? My own father when I'm 6 years old or 5 years old, when he's taking the shot, right? And he says, I offer this for little AJ. In some ways, he's joining his suffering to Christ on the cross. He's allowing his suffering to have meaning by offering it for me. So it's with that, it's beautiful to be here this evening, to pray with you, to pray for you. It's my first time here in this church, hopefully not my last. I invite Anna to give us a song, and we'll be available for some confessions. Thank you very much for your time and for being here and staying awake.
Behold the wood that bears her name. Behold the nails that hold our sin. The tree from which salvation blooms. The death by which we're born again. We take up our cross and follow Him. We lay down our lives that we might live. We carry the hope of Christ within. We take up our cross and follow Him. We embrace the sacrifice and walk the path we cannot see. The burdens of this world made light. By blood and thorn we are redeemed. We take up our cross and follow Him. We lay down our lives that we might live. We carry the hope of Christ within. We take up our cross and follow Him. Lift Him high, lift Him high. Let cross and follow him.
I think Father EJ and Anna deserve a round of applause for that tonight. What's my take on the second night of our Paris Lenten retreat? Almost a year, I lost my mom last July 24, and 3 days before this, I lost my grandmother. For me, that's like a lot of sufferings. Tonight's talk of Father EJ put everything into perspective. Because since I lost grandma 3 days ago, my mind is like 120 miles per hour. I didn't even like sleep for at least three nights already. And that's a lot of suffering. But tonight's talk and tonight's music put everything into perspective. Most especially when Anna sings that song, I Will Follow You. It reminded me again that, hey Ronnie, remember, you're a priest. You kneel down before the bishop and offer yourself for the people. And that's part of the cross that you have to take. How wonderful it is that indeed, even though I'm crying inside and I'm trying to like make sense of everything, and that dawned on me. That dawned on me. Father EJ, thank you so much for that. And Anne, thank you also for that. And I truly hope that you take something out of it tonight, that you will be able to carry it with you, not only tomorrow, not only after this one, but for the rest of our lives. Now, the second part of our Lenten retreat tonight, that will be the sacrament of confession. Again, I told you, we have 4 priests available to listen and at the same time be with us in this journey of reconciliation to God. So Father EJ will occupy our confessional box. Next to him will be Father Bob, OFM, to that exit. I will be here in this exit, and Father George will be occupying that one. And I think Anna are you going to sing some songs? And our faith formation will direct the traffic so that we'll be able to run our confession tonight smoothly. Again, thank you so much for being here.